terms of Aboriginal law, there's a lot of stuff out there. The people out here, the Anagu people, their social structure is regarded as one of the most complex in the history of the world. Right? A lot of knowledge, there's a lot of things going on within that. It's as complex as our society, if not more, in different ways. Now, all of that knowledge, all right, housed in what's called, we have our what's called our legal system, our law, the rules we follow, the things we do day to day, the do's and don'ts, how you speak to other people, how you're educated, you know, how your financial policy works, all these different concepts that make up our society as a whole. In Aboriginal society, that's divided into two areas. Women know half of it, men know half of it. Women's business, men's business. One head man, one head woman. Men can't tell women their business, women can't tell men their business. It's separate. Men's sacred areas, women's sacred areas. Men's ceremony, women's ceremony. So that way, men and women have to work together to make 100%, all right, or everything collapses. So at the Rock, the most northern end of the Rock, is men's business, for Aboriginal men only. All right, to go in there and to pass knowledge on to the next generation of people, to the younger Aboriginal men, to pass their law down to them. The most southern end is women's business. The rest of the Rock is shared. It's a meeting place, the Rock. All right, it's quite a happy place. Information on general issues around the Rock, what are the do's and don'ts, the landscape, how to look after the land, to care for the landscape in that region, the practices you have to do to ensure the landscape in that region survives. The information is passed on at the Rock. So it is an important place as such. Now, out here at Cartajuda, this is men's business, and men's business only. This is the most important men's site in the whole of Central Australia. Right? In a religious sense, and saying it religious is wrong, but it's the best analogy I can use, you'd say the Rock is a church, Cartajuda is the Vatican. This is where it all happens, for men. For women, further out lands you can't even get anywhere near. Okay? So out of the 36 domes here, we're allowed into 8 of them. The rest are all for men, are Aboriginal men. Really important information gets passed down here, right, about their law, their society, their culture. It's passed down. Really serious place. A lot of initiation towards here. It's also a punishment place. Lifestyle out here is really hard. We've had a couple of years of good rains. We got a green centre. All right, go a few years without rain, we have a red centre. It can be really tough. Life out here was hard. The laws were hard. The punishments were hard. So this is a legal centre. And in Aboriginal culture here, it's eye for an eye. Do something to me, I can do something to you or your family. So if you were a bad Aboriginal, all right, and you were a man, all right, out here, a trial in a sense would be held. The elders involved would get together and decide if you're to blame or not. If you are and you didn't stand up and say, yes, I'm at fault, your family gets a punishment. You've got to be man enough or woman enough to stand up and go, right, this is it. Now, basic punishments could be having your arms and legs broken. Now you've got to find water crippled. You're going to die a horrible death. Getting spears, up to 20 poison spears put through you. Alright, sorry cuts. 2 groups of people lined up with nulla-nullas, which are basically baseball bats. You walk down to the centre and they beat you as hard as they can. Often you're beaten to death. If you survive it, you're maimed for life. If you're a repeat offender or you commit a break a really big law, days of old you're burned alive. Nowadays they put a rifle to your head and blow your head off. Alright? Doesn't matter if you're the lowest ranking pleb or the highest elder, everyone faces the law. Just because you're higher up, you don't get special privileges. And the law is there for 2 reasons. 1, to look after society, so the next generation of people survive, and 2, to ensure the environment around you survives. Any laws you break will affect those 2 principles. So they just take you out. And everyone faces those consequences. So it's a harsh life and it's tough, really tough. You're an Aboriginal girl, and I go, I'm a scientist, and I go, wow, tell me about women's business. Well, I'm a man, that's it. All right, you can't tell me. And B, if I was a woman and I asked you, you'd know a lot of the readers of the books are men, so you can't tell me. But I keep going, come on, tell me, come on. So you tell me some great stories, geez, they're good. Doesn't mean they're true, but they're good. All right, so there's a lot of disinformation out there. All right, you can read a lot of good books that say a lot of fantastic things, doesn't mean they're true. Some of the signs, one or 2 of the signs of the Rock, quite a few of the signs in Kakadu aren't true. Why are they there? Because we kept hassling the Aborigines to write signs up. And they went, all right, there's some signs for you. All right? Men for men's business, women for women's business. Never will try and meet. Now secondly, we haven't talked about kids. kid's business. They have a very different concept of what a child is to what we do. For us, it's chronological age. If you're 10, you're a kid. If you're 20, you're an adult. Doesn't matter what you know, it's based on age. Aboriginals, they often wouldn't have a clue. I'm about 40-ish, 30-ish, whatever, I don't know. It doesn't really exist that time frame. What you learn as when we call kids, you learn things like how to make a spear, how to make a boomerang, where to find water, bush foods, bush medicines. It's children's knowledge. That's the same stuff you learn when you go on tours, when you go to Aboriginal cultural centres, when you read books. It's children's knowledge, not adult knowledge. That's survival skills, survival techniques, you know, how to look after yourself, hunting, looking for food and gathering, that sort of information. Logistical stuff. That's got nothing to do with their law. Then what happens, a child then goes to ceremony, initiation. A boy becomes a man, a girl becomes a woman. Only at that point can information about you as a law, your society, be passed on to you. So anyone who's uninitiated is a child. So for all the Aboriginals out here, they're all children. You can have a 99-year-old Aboriginal child. Ask them about Aboriginal affairs, they've never clue. They can tell you how to make spears, how to make boomerangs, you know. Right? Children's knowledge, adult knowledge. It's different. Again, I walk up and go, wow, tell me Aboriginal stuff, and I'm a scientist who's uninitiated, and you go, you're a child, I can only tell you children's stuff. So, kids, what we learn is children's knowledge. The stories you get at the Rock, the stories you get in Kakadu, the Kimberleys, are children's stories, not adult stories, right? In terms of what they classify that. So we can only get a certain amount of information about their culture in a traditional sense. And the rest of it is really, really hard to delve into. There's only dribs and drabs we can pick out of that. Now, turning that, saying it's very hard information about the people, then let's go to one of the most sacred places there is. How much information do you think I've learned about this place?
If this is men's
Business.
sacred area, why can't women
Well, we can go into
tourists go?
yeah, but we can go to a very small section of it. Okay, only a small bit. The bits we're allowed into are sort of like, I don't know. Say I said, let's go to Sydney and walk down a street. And you pick a street, you feel comfortable walking down the street. And I'd say, pick a house. You feel comfortable walking up their driveway. Then I'd say, kick in their front door, sit down and help yourself to beers from the fridge. You feel a bit uncomfortable. You get to a spot and then you've got to be invited in. Well, we're allowed into the walk down the street bit.
Okay.
Anything after that you have to be invited into, which generally means you must be initiated male to go in through there, or becoming initiated male. Yep. So it's a very, very, very important place. So there's not much I can tell you about this place. We'll call this a bit of a Zen walk. Okay. We're going to do a section of the rock known as the Marla walk, the Marla section. Now, in Aboriginal mythology, you may have heard of the term called the dream time, or the dreaming. It talks about the creation period. Now, it's a bit of a wrong term because it sounds like someone had a dream or a vision on how the world began. All right. Every language has its own terminology for creation. Okay. And here it's called the Chukupa. Now, the general idea of the mythology or creation period for Aboriginal people is shared all across Australia. Now, in essence, you just had a spiritual realm, spiritual essence, spiritual energy, that's it. Nothing physical. And this spiritual essence wanted to create a physical reality. So it created the world. But the world was a very different place. It was flat and there was nothing, featureless. Sleeping underground were what we call ancestral beings or creation beings, which are basically giant physical entities of the spiritual. They were giant creatures that could shape change between man and animal. These creatures broke through the crust of the earth, they walked the land, and they created everything. All right? And they sung the world into existence. The red kangaroo, ancestral being, would walk from A to B, would sing a song of creation. The notes would land, maybe a mountain range would form, maybe a river system. And that is known as a creation line or a song line. A bit later on, maybe the emu ancestral being would cross over that first mountain range and would change it, would add a waterfall to it, add some birds to it, whatever. Until finally, with this layering effect of creation, we have the world as we know it. Everything has a story attached to it. Every single thing you see around you, a particular ancestral being has created it. So, when the ancestral beings had built the earth, I suppose, some of them had died. The remaining ancestral beings then created Aboriginal people. All right, every Aboriginal has a direct linkage to a particular ancestral being. The people here are Marla people, rufous hair wallaby people. they come from the Rufus hair wallaby ancestral being. And the ancestral being said to Aboriginal people, to man, we've created heaven on earth, paradise. If you try and change the world in any way, shape or form, we'll uncreate it. You can't play with the earth. And they handed down to Aboriginals Aboriginal law. All their social set, immigration, all these different policies they gave to Aboriginal people and said, you must follow this. If you don't, the world will be destroyed. So Aboriginal people have been passing that knowledge down by word of mouth only, from generation to generation to generation. Aboriginal languages are a spoken language only. When you see a sign saying Uluru Kata Juda, it's spoken in Pitjantjatjara, but it's written in English. All Aboriginal words you see written are just in English, because there's no Aboriginal writing. So that law is also called the Chukuba, that is sacred Aboriginal law that has been passed down. So, in essence, they're looking at 65,000 years of continual existence in one area. What they do every day hasn't changed for 65,000 years. So in essence, through evolution, their environment has adapted to using Aboriginal practices as part of their survival. So Aboriginal people became fully functioning members of the ecosystem of Australia. They're as important in Australia as the wind, as the rain, as the sun. If you took all the water out of Australia, Australia would die, of course. You take all the sunshine out of Australia, Australia would die. In the last 200 years, Aboriginal practice is not happening. Australia is now uncreating. Environmentally, we're collapsing. Highest rate of mammal extinction on the planet. Some people suggest in 80 years we won't have any fresh water left at all in Australia. It'll all be gone. We're uncreating. So that's sort of where the scientific and the Aboriginal spiritual meet. Scientists now are actually coming into national parks like this and going, why here is this animal, this plant growing and surviving, and the rest of Australia is dying? What are you people doing? And hopefully learning off the Aborigines to learn exactly what you need to do. Because there's a lot of symbiotic relationships. The plants, the animals, the weather, the soil, the people, all have to be there to help each other. Remove one creature, the whole thing collapses. So they play a very, very important role in Australia's environment because they're part of the survival of Australia. So in areas like this national park, scientists are trying to learn how to look after the land because they really don't know how to at all. It's all collapsing around them. So we're going to do a walk known as the Marla Walk. All right, come on right to put up the sign. We're going to do, these people are Marla people. All right, there's 4 main ancestral beings at the rock and 4 main creation beings. One came from the north, one from the south, one from the east, one from the west. When you went to the waterhole, you may have seen a small sign talking about 2 snakes that had a battle, which shaped that waterhole, that whole area, Uluru and Kunia. Right? They came from the north and from the east. We're going to do the Marla section. Now the story that we get is a children's story, of course. The essence of the story is the Marla people were the first Aboriginal people to come to the rock ever. And they saw it and went, fantastic, look at this, it's a great big rock, we'll have a ceremony. And it was decided on men's business. The ceremonial pole was planted at the north end of the rock, over there where I dropped you guys off this morning. The pole's put in the ground, and that opens up an invisible link between the physical world and the spiritual world. Now, the Marla women were scattered around here. As that ceremony finished, a second group of ancestral being men turned up, the Mulga Seed men. They invited the Marla men to their own ceremony. The Marla men chased them away, scared them off. The Mulga Seed men weren't very happy, so they got the aid of Kadachi. The Kadachi are very powerful Aboriginal men. They're sort of a cross between Aboriginal witch doctors, sorcerers and assassins. And the Kadachi said, we'll help you, we've got to punish the Marla people for showing you disrespect. So using magic, they conjured up a giant devil dog called Kirpain. Kirpain was like a violent storm racing across the desert. He attacked the Marla people, killed 2 of them, injured many of them. They had to flee into South Australia, and Kirpain continued to cross into Queensland with the stories taken up there. The story we get, that took what, 20 seconds? The adult version takes 2 days. So it's obviously missing. The best way to describe the children's stories is like, I'll say you go to a DVD shop and you're going to rent a classic DVD, and you get, say Kevin Costner classic, right? And you read the back and it says, Kevin met a wolf, lived with Indians. You know the whole story. And then you go home and watch 29 bloody hours of the thing, whatever it went for, alright, you get all those intimate details. That's the adult version. So we just get the children's stuff. Nothing really in there to tell you about the culture, just gives you a bit of an overview of the story. In a sense, lots of lesser ancestral beings as well. Little cave in here. This is the home of the Ichijari. There's one. is like a guinea pig with a pouch. All right, we know very little about them. There's plenty of them around, but they live underground and hardly ever come to the surface. So we don't know much about them. But this is the ancestral being version, the creation version, the spiritual version. Came to the rock, wanted to make itself a home, so it dug in and eventually went in through there. And it's connected to the Marla story because when Kerpen attacked the Marla people, there were two ancestral being boys sitting over at that section of the rock. They were scooping up mud, throwing the mud up on the rock, climbing in that little section and sliding down, dragging their fingers behind them, hence all those vertical lines coming down the rock. And of course the giant devil dog attacks us, the boys are terrified, and the Ichijari helped them escape to Mount Connor, or for those who came from Alice, Surprise Mountain, and we'll discover this afternoon on the way to Kings Canyon. So again, that's the children's version, right? The story is much more complex, so that's the children's version. Now, what this is used for. This is almost a babysitting service. In here, Aboriginal families have a slightly different structure to our families, right? Your biological mum and dad's your mum and dad. All the other adults are your mum and dad as well. And you have the same emotional commitment to them. Everyone looks after you. Right? Your brothers and sisters are your brothers and sisters, but all the other kids are your brothers and sisters on the same emotional level. So you're not just being raised by a small group. You're having influence from all different areas in your life. It's a very, very big family in a sense, without actually having to be family, but emotionally it's still treated as family. But every now and again, the kids would have to be left alone. The adults may have to go off hunting or whatever. So the adults would happily leave the small children here, knowing full well the Ichijari would look out for them. Because you know, like a gopher, you know, they heads out of holes?
Yeah.
Well, there's all the holes there. So if the kids are here, they don't want to leave here, they don't want to get in too much trouble because they know that the spirit will stick a little head up and have a look. If they do anything wrong, the parents are going to know about it. The parents always do somehow, as parents do. So they'll be sat down here, knowing that the spirit would look after the kids, wouldn't put them in any harm, but to make sure the kids didn't play up either. Just by sticking a little head up and having a look around. So it's a little babysitting service, this particular spot. Now, these stories of giant animal beings and things, what are they about? Well, I guess firstly, are they true? And yes, they are, in a way. When it's believed Aboriginal people came down from Southeast Asia, Bali, Lombok, those areas, 65,000 years ago plus. Now, in places like Bali, about 100,000 years ago, a weird thing happened. They came up with two really different ideas. Firstly, they came up with the concept of society. Rules, regulations, social structures, moral codes, how to structure the levels. And that idea of a society has gone to every culture around the world, doesn't matter who you are. Secondly, they sat there and suddenly went, is there anything more out there? What else is out there? Philosophy, spirituality, religion, all started in Bali. And it's gone all around the world, irrelevant of whatever religion people believe in. So those early ideas of those two, society and spirituality, dropped straight into Australia, Northern Australia. Australia was a very different place then to what it is now. It was much, much wetter, and we had what's known as megafauna, which means big animals. Giant versions of today's animals. Crocodiles, 25 metres long. Little wombats the size of a hippopotamus. Ducks, 3 metres high. Kangaroos, 9 metres high. Huge animals. You're looking at a bunch of people from Asia who could see an Asian elephant, a tiger, a monkey, and everything else was about this big. And suddenly a 25-metre crocodile runs by. That would be absolutely mind-blowing. It'd be having a dinosaur literally run by you today. It'd be mind-blowing. Imagine a 25-metre crocodile running through some trees. How much damage would it cause? So giant animals shaping the landscape. So probably quite possibly the world's first ever religion comes from that. So that's where the stories stem from. So yeah, they're based on reality. Now, why are they important? Well, imagine in our culture, all right? Who on this planet knows the entire of Western culture? Everything. History, finance, medicine, every single little bit of it. Of course, nobody, it's impossible. You can't do brain surgery and run a country and know how to build a bridge and go to space and be the world's greatest historian and be the world's greatest horse rider. It's impossible. We all have our little bits. You might be a lawyer, you might be a teacher, so you know the bits that you need to know for your time. And secondly, we all share some knowledge. We share the rules of our country, some mathematics, writing skills. But no one can put it in their head. So somehow this information about Western society has to be stored somewhere, and we store it in writing. We invented symbols. Get two lines, put them together, it forms the letter T. Put a few letters together, it forms a word. They're just symbols, but for us, we recognise them as words. So our entire culture is stored on paper, and now the internet as well. You're at school, you have a teacher, what they do, turn to page 6. It's all in the book, all right? Aboriginal people didn't have the miraculous ability to store an entire culture in their head either. So they needed a way of storing information. But since they don't have a written language, they have a spoken language. So that knowledge is stored in stories, in song, even in dance at times. Exact same process occurring, but just done in a different way. So as Aboriginal culture goes, there's some general rules that all Aboriginal people know, but of course, if you're an Aboriginal doctor, you only know doctor stuff, you know? So you would have your particular stories that you would learn. And if in Aboriginal, your job was to ensure that this part of the rock, that was the balance between the grasses and the trees, was always maintained, you would have your stories to do that. So these stories are the internet, universities, schools of Aboriginal culture. Our entire culture is stored in a written form. If tomorrow every book on the planet burned down, the internet collapsed, how long would our culture last? It'd collapse. All that knowledge would be gone. Right? In Aboriginal culture, the biggest thing to hit Aboriginal culture in Australia wasn't, you know, people, the massacres and everything else that occurred. We had a law put in place called the Aboriginal Act, where Aboriginal children belonged to the government, not to their parents. The police would go in, hold down the parents, take the kids, and take them out bush in Lutheran Catholic missions. 60,000 kids were taken. All right, it was done for 3 reasons. Firstly, an Aboriginal person and white person have a child, that child is 1/3 less black. 3 generations later, they're white. So to breed the blackness out of them. Secondly, they were taught domestic skills, cooking, cleaning, then they'll be given to good white families to have as domestic staff. And thirdly, you're looking at a culture, the old people pass the knowledge down to the young people by word of mouth. Remove the young people. When the old people die, end of culture. It'd be like all our books being burned. So yeah, so that stopped in 1972. So it was still legal by government for children to be kidnapped in Australia up to 1972. So yeah, if you're looking at 60,000 kids who weren't allowed to speak their language, weren't allowed to mix with white people. You know, there's letters even back in the 1960s where the Archbishop of Perth going, well, I've known this Aboriginal girl now for 8 years, I'd always almost allow her to go into my house, into public, almost. So, totally lost. They're not Aboriginals, they're not white Australians, they have no family at all. What are you? You're nothing. They have zero identity. So that was the biggest thing in Australia where Aboriginal culture was crushed because of it. So in areas now where Aboriginal land has been given back, Aboriginal people are trying to relearn what they've lost, to relearn those ties. So it was only in 1967 that Aboriginal people were classed as Australian citizens. Prior to 1967, the government classified Aboriginals as fauna and flora, which is plants and animals of Australia. In 1967, they were classified as human beings, which is only 30-something years ago.
Yeah.
So they weren't slaves, they were beneath that, they were animals. So in 1976, they got given the right to vote in Australia, to have a say in the country. So it's really only been 35 years that they've allowed to do horrendous things like go to a museum, go to a shop, go to a movie theatre, go to a pool, go to the beach, ride in a bus, get a taxi, anything. They weren't allowed to because they weren't human. So, but that was the biggest one with these stories disappearing because of that stolen generation. So yeah, incredibly important. It sounds weird, giant animals roaming the earth and what these stories are about, but as I said, the entire culture is encapsulated inside it. There could be history, it could be cooking lessons, it could be maps. You travel the world, you get a Lonely Planet out. Some of these stories are Lonely Planets, telling you how to get from Alice Springs to get to the rock. By just looking out going, no compass, no map. The biggest misconceptions you'll ever get that Australia has art. We don't. We do now. Lots of Aboriginals paint pictures on canvas to sell tourists, but prior to that, we don't have art. Emotional expression. I need to get this out. Art's a way of doing that in any way, shape or form. Art can be used for creativity. You have a particular style and that style can blend and change to a new style. Art can be used to recreate images. Here's a mountain, I'll paint a picture of the mountain. Okay? Those are reasons for art. None of those reasons appear anywhere on rocks in Australia. what you're basically looking at, remember I said before, symbols, we've created symbols, you create words, here are symbols. So in essence, what you're looking at is Aboriginal writing. It's sort of like a library. Instead of done it in words, it's done in symbols and pictures, but the exact same idea, right? To communicate a message from one person to the next. It's got absolutely nothing to do with art or pretty pictures sitting on the rock. The prettiness of a picture means nothing, right? It's purely for communication levels. Now, what information could you want to be communicated? Well, one could be, say, a road sign. It says down there, circles inside of circles mean a waterhole. So you might come to a cave, and the very left of the cave you see that picture. So that's telling you to the left of the cave is a waterhole. Nice and easy, all right? Down there you can notice there's circles inside of circles, a couple of lines going up to another circle. In the desert that would mean a journey. You always journey from waterhole to waterhole to waterhole. So that's a huge historical event that's taken place. We learn about, I don't know, Marco Polo going from Italy to China and back in history lessons. A huge event. Well, there's a huge Aboriginal event, historical event. So there's a history book sitting in the corner, a massive story attached to that. Right, the whole Marla story. In the Marla story we contained your do's and don'ts and how, you know, the laws of this area. You might start walking in that direction and suddenly come up across some mountains and go, gee, I wonder what the laws are for this country. That whole Marla story might be in a symbol, the Marla symbol. You'll see that symbol painted on the rock and you go, ah, Marla country still, I know the do's and don'ts, the laws of this country. It's like going to another country when you get immigration, they give you a little booklet saying, you know, you can and can't do this in our country. Same thing. Right, communication again. It can be used for magical purposes. All right. Now, you would get the men hunted and the women gathered. So the men are here, a couple of boys have gone out, they've caught us a malu, a huge red kangaroo. We want more red kangaroos of that size. What the men would do is they would paint the red kangaroo on the rock. Now in Kakadu, for those people who've been to Kakadu and up to Ubir and Nalangi, the big art sites up there, you would see the kangaroo fully painted, all the lines inside of the X-rail style, which is one that appears on a lot of t-shirts. All right. Up in Kakadu, it takes 2 hours a day to find food. In Central Australia, it takes 10 to 12 hours a day to find food. If you sat down there and painted a big kangaroo, all pretty, you'd be dead in summer. 65 degrees, the sun shining off the rock, there's no time. So in Central Australia, you would paint the outline, or maybe just the tracks. All right. So you get different styles of art depending on the environment type that you live in, of course. You can have a sign saying rock art of Uluru can be written in English, it can be written in Chinese, it can be written in, you know, Greek. All different symbols, but it still means exactly the same thing. So the men have painted the rock. Now, the belief is, right, Aboriginal people have a duality to life. They see it in two levels. Firstly, you've got the physical realm. You've got trees, you've got the bench, the birds, my shoe, whatever. It's all physical. But running that is a spiritual energy. All right, and that is equally important as the physical. And the elders see both. They go, why can't you see the physical and the spiritual energy behind it? And we say, well, we can see the tree. That's it. It's almost like having a flashlight, a battery. The battery is the physical, so the flashlight is the physical. Turn it on, nothing happens. You've got to put batteries inside it. Then you turn it on, it works. So without the energy, nothing runs. So what's happening is, energy patterns can't be created or destroyed, but energy patterns can affect energy patterns. So the boys are painting on the rock. They're focusing their energy in that painting. It's almost like a meditation. Their energy patterns goes out, affects the spiritual energy patterns of the red kangaroo. The spiritual runs the physical. So it'll cause a physical behavioural change in the red kangaroos, and the red kangaroos will come in. So a lot of stuff in the Aboriginal lifestyle runs on both levels. The physical at times even more than the spiritual, even more than the physical, because they say it runs it. When you hunt a red kangaroo, for example, you've got to do a little ceremony. Right? If you just killed the red kangaroo, its spiritual energy would go back to the spiritual realm. It's like turning the torch on, the batteries start to get flatter. If you don't recharge those batteries, the torch dies. And they say the same for the world, you know. If you don't recharge the batteries, the spiritual energy of the planet will die. So when they hunt the red kangaroo and kill it, they have to do a little ceremony. The spiritual energy of the red kangaroo is then absorbed into the rock, into a tree, so you're recharging the battery of the planet. So it runs on those two levels. So that means, quite often, in many cases, the physical act of painting is far more important than the finished product, which is why you get paintings over paintings over paintings over paintings over paintings. Because once it's done, it's finished. For us, we call this a gallery. Aboriginals would not even perceive this is not a gallery. They wouldn't sit around and admire the paintings on the rock. They'd use it to get information, and they would do their own painting for that purpose. And then it's over and done with, and that's finished. Now, we don't have a lot of rock art in Central Australia. Go to the Kimberleys, northwest Western Australia. Go up North Queensland, Arnhem Land. It's all rocks. There's nothing but rocks. What are you going to paint on? Rocks. Drive from here to Adelaide. For the first 1,200 kilometres, try and find a rock. Good luck. There's absolutely dead flat nothing. So it's very hard to do rock art when there's no rocks. There's one thing we have a lot of in deserts down there is sand. So they do sand art. The same principles, they draw the pictures in the sand. The material that's used to paint with is called ochre. It's a very chalk-like rock. You can grind it down, mix it with water, and you can paint with it. And ochre also contains a bit of iron. So ochre that's got a little bit of iron in it goes rusty, it might turn yellow. It has a lot of iron in it, it turns really red. So you get all these earth colours running through it. And instead of painting the ochre on the rock, they'll just pour the ochre into the drawing they've done in the sand. Once the drawing's done, you rub it out, or even if you left it within 24 hours, the sand would blow over the top and gone. So we don't have permanent evidence. Move out of the cave. The reason why that scientists go off on rock art is because there's no real history of Aboriginal people. They didn't write anything down. You can't pick up any old books or anything like that. They didn't build anything. They didn't knock trees down to build a temple, for example. So there's really nothing out there to say Aboriginal people were here. There's a few old bones here and there. That's about it. But here's evidence. So firstly, you can say, well, there's rock art here. Obviously, Aboriginals have lived here. I wonder how long for. So you can scrape a bit of the paint off the rock. You can carbon date it, neutron and bar it, whatever you like. And that paint might be 1.6 billion years old. Well, it doesn't mean the painting's been sitting on the rock for 1.6 billion years, of course. It's how old the paint is, the rock. So that makes it really, really tough, all right? It's all guesstimates, really. It's a lot of guessing. These paintings are really new, all right? It's believed they've only been here for about 2,000 years, which is really new. There's paintings up in Western Australia that are believed to be 53,000 years old, up on the rock, up in the Kimberleys. Now, we can prove, though, these have been here since 1930. Remember the people who came from Alice, the story of Lassiter, the guy with the lost gold? A guy called Lassiter came through in 1930 looking for gold. First guy to come to the rock on a camel. And if you have a look in there, those vertical white lines, just to the right of it in brown, and it's very faint, looking that way, is a camel. So the first time they could have ever seen a camel here is 1930. And they would have painted on the rock going, what the hell is this? You know, keep an eye out for this thing, bloody hell.
Yeah.
So it means all these pictures could only have been here since 1930. But it's very unscientific science when it comes to Aboriginals. There's a lot of guesstimates really going on. Yeah. But feel free, you know, it goes back about 5 or 6 different layers in there, as we know. So grab some shots, and once you're done, we'll sneak around to the right-hand side next door. What it was used for was, it was for boys, Aboriginal boys, right? It was a pre-initiation cave. Remember I said yesterday, you get initiated from boys to men and from girls to women, right? It was a very big process. It's the biggest event of their lives. In essence, you're going from a non-functioning member of an ecosystem to a fully functioning member of an ecosystem of an area. It's a big step. And for their whole childhood, they're being looked after. There's always usually someone around to look after them, to keep an eye on them. They're just learning their survival skills, how to navigate, how to find water, how to find food, the laws of the area, so you start to do. Then they get initiation. It's really tough. First thing that happens is the boys are taken to the first cave we went to, the Itchijari, the little marsupial mole. Elders come down outside which boys they think are the right to go ceremony, initiation. And those boys brought here, sat in this and they're left. See the kids in the back want to actually drive the rock? Always waiting shaded. And they're legend. They keep it a day, a week, a month, a year. Anything, just left. They're not allowed to move. A day, a couple of times a day if it's hot. An elder comes in, brings in food and water for them and leaves them. And they sit.
They just sit there all day?
It sends them mad. Alright? If you had now, as an adult Aboriginal, have to now walk to Cairns by yourself, in business. Alright? That could be a 6-month walk, you're by yourself. You're going to go mad, aren't you? Right? You learn the mental patience and all strength to deal with just being by yourself, just being there. This is their first introduction to, you know, it's like, this is like to be an adult Aboriginal. Alright? You're going to have a bit of training here and you have to learn to deal with it. So it's time where they start, at some decided, okay, it's time to then to the next phase of the ceremony. They paint it up. Ceremony called the Malu blood ceremony, the red kangaroo blood ceremony. Just learning story, ancestral beings, story, how you society. This is the good side of it. First of all, they get their first sharpened kangaroo bone. They're sliced open and burning holes from the fire put in it to bring up big scales. Find out about it, pass over your travel documents. Your name, your age, where you're from, is written on pieces of paper. They don't have pieces of paper, so they wear that on their body. So if I want to know about you, I just go, yep, know all about you. You can't lie about it. Right? It's physically on you. Okay? They get circumcised as well. Right? There's a lot of blood sharing and a lot of boys are really, really weak. They can hardly move a bit. Then they're nursed back, but only point. At that point, they're sent bush. For the first time in their lives, they're out there for about 2 weeks by themselves. No one to look after them. And they have to survive. Alright? If they've been a good kid, they'll survive that process. And as little Aboriginal kids, you know, if today you're a bunch of Aboriginal kids and I'm saying, today we're going to learn to find water on a sand dune, will you stop passing notes? Look, don't flick her ear. It's not like we're at school. The kids are encouraged to learn. If they really don't want to, go away and play. It's your life, literally. Alright? So it's set bush for 2 weeks in a weakened state. Again, if you've got to walk hands and it's drought and you still have to do it, you're going to find food and water, you're going to end up really, really weak. But you still have to do it. It's a tough life out here. Again, an introduction to the kids. Welcome to adulthood. You know, this is what it's all about. So, boys that survive it come back, ones that don't die. Alright, if you know how to survive it here and I don't, hasn't rained in 8 years at 65 degrees Celsius, and it's going to take you 12 hours to find food for yourself, and you have to look after me, we're both actually going to die. Alright, you've got to know how to look after yourself. That's how rough, tough life is out here. So, a big moment in their life, and that ceremony can go maybe for a month to years, depending on what the elders see at the time. It's a huge event for them. And then once they come out of that, then they're Aboriginal. Right? Lots of things happen in there that we don't know about, but that's the basic outline, the schedule of what occurs. Now, of course, that's men's business. What about women's business? What about you ladies? Well, we know very little about women's business. 2 reasons. One, men gossip. Aboriginal men have gone blah, 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 had their mouths up a bit, and Aboriginal women have gone, oh, we're not telling you anything, eh? No. Thrown the key away. And secondly, when Aboriginals first started to get studied in like the 50s and 60s, men were artists, and men studied men's things, you know what I mean? So, Aboriginal women's businesses, we know very, very little about it indeed. Now, one other thing happens as well, you get what's called a skin type. Alright? It's not the colour of your skin, it is your hereditary genetic code. A bunch of people invented pencils, but 6,000 years ago worked out human genetics. Science has no idea how they did it, and when the Aboriginals are asked, they say, oh, it's really easy. We just asked the ancestral beings and they told us. It's probably never to be solved topic. Now basically we'd actually be, the reason why they, and I'll explain the process, but the reason why they do it, we'd actually be like a really big bunch of Aboriginals out here. Our group would normally be half this. So imagine it's just us people here, and anyone in this group can marry anyone and have babies, and those children can marry anyone and have babies. Very quickly, incest, genetic deformity, immune system breakdown. Within 4 generations, we'd all be dead. The biggest no-no is incest. Can't happen, all right? So what happens, you've just been initiated, right? And we work with this massive equation, and to simplify it down, say your dad is skin type A, that's his genetic code, and your mum is skin type B. Put those in the equation, push enter, out comes an F. You're an F. Mark that on you, we go there, cut. Alright. Now put F back in the equation, push enter, out comes C. An F can only marry a C. And we look around for a C and go, da, 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 da. There's a C, that's who you're going to marry. You get no choice in it whatsoever. Alright? By doing this, you'll only come up against a partner who you're related to every 42 generations, which is about every 800 years. Really, really pure genetics. Right? It's believed Australia was absolutely disease-free for the whole time they were here. Now, not only now do we look for an F here, we'd actually look over there at Troy's group and go, right, there's an F, you've got to move over there now. So people physically being moved further and further and further away as well to ensure absolutely no incest, so the purest genetics you could possibly get to ensure the survival of your species. So emphasis in Aboriginal culture is not on the individual. I'm an individual, I have the right to, no you don't. Emphasis is purely on the continuation of society. So you don't get to pick and choose a lot of things. It's picked and chosen for you by the elders, and theirs has been chosen by the people before, and the people before, and the people before. So totally on society around you, not what you want as an individual. So it's a very different setup as a system. Yeah. So the boys and girls are then separated. Well, the young men and women are separated a little bit longer, a bit more learning, and then you get married. All right. Now you love the marriage. All right. You're going to marry over there, involved in this. Who's over here? Your future mum-in-law is over this way. Mum wants to know, are you a man or a mouse? Mum's going to test you out. Right? What she does, we're all gathered round. You're painted up for the wedding. You're laid face down on the ground. Mum comes out with a nulla, which is a baseball bat. Got a fair idea what she's going to do. She beats the crap out of you. All right? She just lays right into you. Now, if you lie there going like, ow, ooh, or oh, Big Mama do it to me in spandex, right? Anything like that, then she goes, no. And if she's happy then, she'll then turn around and go, my daughter can come forward. But there might be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 women that are all C's. You've got a buffet. Look at that. They've all got a mum. And all the mums come out. They all have a go at it. And all the mums sit around going, oh, he's got nice ears, but his toes are wonky. And finally someone goes, I think he's lovely. Then that daughter gets more forwards to you. So, yeah. So a lot of the time, the old people have the upper echelon. Doesn't mean you're an elder. The older age you get, the more power you have, and in a sense, the more influence you have, and the more you're looked after. The young people, the ones that are all fit bodies, healthy, are the ones that get all the scummy jobs. All right, and as you get older, you get looked after more and more and more as you go up. So yeah, in some areas, further north from here, an old man will always marry a young girl, and an old woman will always marry a young man.
Right.
Two young people have no life skills. An old person's done a lot of living. So there's you, all young and attractive now, you've married some old bloke, all right? That guy can help you through life. He's obviously going to die first, and when you're old, you get a toy boy, all right? And then you help the toy boy through life. Again, emphasis on society, not what you exactly do. So if you want to go in here and take some photos, you stand up at this corner here.
You don't understand that? The largest flat top mountain in Australia. The largest. Yeah. I don't know.